some questions? Wow, lots of questions. Yes, sir.
You said there's a no bid process going on. Does the Attorney General have discretion to change that, or does it have to be legislatively changed?
No, the Attorney General has discretion to change that. And without question, that policy will come to an end in our administration. Yes, ma'am.
What do you know about this ad that we're seeing on TV about Renee owing so much in taxes?
Well, you know, oftentimes it's hard to really discern exactly what's true and what's false.
Right.
You know, what I can tell you is that these establishment politicians, there's not much good to be said about them. I would encourage you to do a little bit more homework. I mean, if you see it on TV, chances are it's twisted, warped, and turned in 100 different directions. You know, those that have the internet, it's worthwhile to dig a little deeper into the issue. But what I would say is when it comes to Congress, there's one litmus test overriding all others. What is your fidelity to the Constitution? All right. To a degree, everything else becomes irrelevant. And to the degree that nobody's saying I have fidelity to the Constitution, well, I mean, that's the litmus test, and the rest of it really doesn't matter, because if they have no fidelity to the United States Constitution, they do not deserve that job, and they do not deserve your vote, no matter what other facts are there, no matter how bad the other guy is, they don't deserve your vote. So I would say it's got to be about the Constitution, especially with our congressmen. Yes, sir.
I think about 2 months ago in the paper there was an article on that issue, and basically I understand it that he had been what he felt was unfairly with some tax liabilities, and he took it to court, and as many would, and he won the case. He didn't you know, throw out any is the tax cheat, but he had a business situation, and they wrongly had taxed him, and he took it to court because he was proved clear. At least that's what the paper said, which was an article.
Well, you know, and I can tell you, and I've defended small businesses, I run a small business. In order to stay, you know, with the tax code, I mean, it is designed specifically to destroy small businesses, without question. Right? I mean, our tax code is positively insane. You know, I mean, I would say, let's get rid of the IRS and replace them with nothing. Yes, sir.
Robert, I don't think the questions regarding Jim Renacci or the other races are appropriately directed to you. Just to answer both of your questions, the best person to find out the clarity to answer that question is the candidate. If I want to find out how you stand on an issue, I'm going to ask you. If I want to find out what's the truth about something else, I'm going to look that person in the eye and I'm going to ask them a question. And I think that's what the fair thing is to do in any.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting on that point. There was recently an article in the New York Times that says incumbent congressmen are being counseled to no longer participate in any open town hall forums because the last thing they want is people actually calling them out on what they're doing. And so they're really getting rid of these forums, and I think, you know, it's quite to the detriment of our system of Republican government. So, did you have a question? Or?
Well, from the perspective of transparency in the Attorney General's office, it sounds to me like you're looking to interject that into the office. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that contracts, external contracts, would then be open and available on the internet, which is really our best tool of the voter understand, or the citizen understanding what's taking place. Does that what you're
Yeah.
proposing?
Absolutely, and not just inside the Attorney General's office. One of the functions of the Attorney General is to enforce Ohio's sunshine laws. And a great example in a lot of your local governments, they will abuse this concept of executive session, where just about every darn thing they do is an executive session so that they don't have to disclose exactly what it is they're doing. So we would be looking at those instances and where there is a clearly disproportionate number of executive sessions. People from our office will be investigating that and, you know, bringing them back around to compliance with Ohio law.
Okay, so there's an issue that's come up within the last week with our current Attorney General, is that Attorney General has advised the pension plans for the State Teachers Union, et cetera, not to respond to newspapers' questions about where the pension funds are and what the results are. That's a campaign issue, is it not?
But absolutely, and it's worth noting that the Republican has essentially said, yeah, we don't want to talk about that either, because that's fine, we probably do the same thing, and no doubt that they would. Now, it's worth noting in that issue, the newspapers are not looking necessarily for the individual names, so that, you know, Mr. Jones will have published what his retirement account is, but rather what they're looking for are the various positions and how these guaranteed structured pension funds are working and how the funds are working, because what is clear is that the system, and I mean everybody knows it, this system is a dinosaur that is absolutely ready to topple the state government into bankruptcy, right? And they really don't want that out there, so they're covering it up. I can tell you, we would have a very different view on that policy. We would be pushing forward for the disclosure because, you know, the truth has to shine in this thing. I can't remember how to properly attribute it, but they say in politics the best disinfectant is sunlight. And I truly believe that to be a case. I think, you know, a great example of this, some of you might be familiar with the town of Bell, California. This is a town where the city manager is making, you know, $800,000 a year. The chief of police is making well, nobody cares, nobody's looking, right? And so they're getting away with this, right? Disclosure, getting the information out, putting it to the people is absolutely critical aspect, and it's got to be more than the press, because I mean I can tell you so many things are buried on page B7, right, where the newspapers report on it, but nobody knows about it. The Attorney General, especially in some of these key areas, not only should be making the information get out, but should be using the bully pulpit of their office to make sure the citizens know exactly what's happening. And that would be my view of what we would do in the Attorney General's office. Yes, sir.
I'm at a loss, a couple of things that you have said tonight. I'll take just one issue, all right? You talked about overturning federal statutes of federal law and neighborhood gun control. How, as an Attorney General of the state, do you expect to deal with this issue when it's been defined by federal statutes and federal courts? You don't have the authority to do that. They will overrule you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, we're gonna litigate the issue, and what I would say is that federal statutes that are not valid under the Ohio Constitution are null and void. And the way that government works,
sir, that are valid under the Ohio Constitution, that is not relevant.
No, that's
it
not.
has to be valid under the federal Constitution.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
You misheard me, sir. Let me-
Not under the government, not under the
Takes
federal
priority over
Constitution.
all
Hold on a
laws,
second.
all
I'll answer
constitutions
your
that state relevant.
A federal statute that is not proper, that violates the federal Constitution, is not a valid law. And that's the bottom line. So if they say you no longer have the right to speak out against the government, right? That's a violation of your First Amendment rights, it's not a valid law.
So I understand.
Now, the way that government works, and we have to understand, this is not a system where the federal government rides supreme over the states and all issues. That's not how it was set up at all. When the King of England granted independence, it was for 13 individual states. Now, those states decided, you know what, we're going to create a federal government that has very limited, enumerated powers that can only do certain
I understand the
things.
history. I
And
understand
we
the history
we
of this, but
retain
I'm
our
just asking
sovereignty.
you, as the Attorney General, you make these comments out here about things that you can do. I'm an ex-city police officer, an ex-federal agent, and I spent the last 10 years as a criminal justice professor at a major university. And I know a little bit about the Constitution. I know about enforcing the law. And some of the things that you have said tonight, for example, talking about crime, are just plain not correct.
I would disagree with you.
All
The
right.
state has sovereignty, and, you know, to put it in historical context, I would direct you to the Virginia resolutions, the Kentucky
I understand
resolutions.
about that.
There were
Let's
doctrine
not
of
talk historically.
nullification.
Let's talk about the comments that you have made tonight about gun laws, the federal responsibility, the inability for us to enforce crimes across state lines and so forth. That's not true. If you commit a crime, and a warrant is issued or an indictment is issued by a grand jury, okay? It goes into the National Crime Information Center. You can be extradited for that, and you will be.
Yeah, I think
The
you're
real term is
misunderstanding,
indictment,
you're
not
misunderstanding
extradited.
the point that I was making.
Well,
It's not what I
that's
said.
the impression that you're left with.
Well, that's, and I'd be happy to talk with you further about that.
But
But
I
that's
don't
not
see how you
what
as
I
an
said.
attorney general can have this, you're giving these people the idea that you have all this authority, that you can do this and you can do that. You can't. You can't. You are governed by law, by federal law particularly, in what you can do.
No. The states are sovereign states, and we have to
We wish that
enforce
was the
state
case.
sovereignty.
Supposedly, we wish that was the case.
If you just lay down and play dead, it would be that way too.
Well, that's not the issue. Wait a minute.
And I don't wanna get into the debate here. I can tell you my position is, we're going to enforce state sovereignty. But we're gonna make it a point because we're not going to lay dead and let the federal government roll over us on issues where they have no authority. They have authority for specifically defined areas. In Article 1, Section 8, and if it's not in Article 1, Section 8, they can't do it. And the 9th Amendment makes that clear, and the 10th Amendment makes that clear. They can't do it, and we're not going to just roll over and let them do it. We're going to stand up and tell them no, and that's why all these states, other states' attorney general have said, we're going to litigate on this health care issue. We're going to litigate on this issue regarding guns. Right? There's a number of states that have already passed a federal or a state firearms freedom act, and these are great ways for us to push back against the federal government and tell them enough is enough. That's what I stand for. I'm probably chewing into Eric's time. I'll be happy to stick around. I'll be in the back and I'll answer any other questions as well. Thank you.